Hello, my name is Cheyenne Cone Postel. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a program officer on the communities team here at Mass Cultural Council. I co-manage the creative experiences program with Amy Chu and Kaylin King. And we're delighted to have you here today to learn about the fiscal year 27 cycle of creative experiences. Just a note that our fiscal year 27 has not yet started, but this program is in the future. So um, we will have ASL interpreting and live captioning today from our partners interpreting service providers. On ASL interpretation, we have Denise Vanderstol and Jordan Staley. And on live captioning, we have Jessica Niederhide. If you would like to follow the captions of this presentation, please click on the caption icon on the bottom of the screen. If you would like to follow the captions in a separate device or new window, you can follow the link displayed on the slide that my colleagues will also be posting in the chat. If you need help accessing the captions or interpretations, please type a message in the Q&A so we can assist. Mass Cultural Council is happy to offer alternative formats, auxiliary aids, translation, interpretation, and other services necessary so that any individual can participate in Mass Cultural Council's programs and services. You can contact staff for help, and there are buttons to help on our website as well. To facilitate your request in a timely manner, though, please contact us at least 3 weeks before any event or grant deadline. And just to note, this presentation is a supplement to the guidelines for the Creative Experiences program. It is not intended to replace them at all. So again, let us know your questions in the Q&A. Today's webinar is being recorded. The recording and the slides will be made available on our website in a few days. We're also going to be recording a Spanish version of this presentation, which will be made available on our website and our YouTube channel as well. Please utilize the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window to ask questions. The chat will not be available, so please put everything in the Q&A. If you can't find the Q&A, click the More button at the bottom of your screen, and you can find it there. We'll have a chance to, in addition to having the questions answered throughout the webinar by the team, we'll have a chance to verbally go through some questions at the end of the presentation. So this is our team. Kaylin King joins us from the operating support team. I am here from the communities team, and Amy Chu is our colleague from the Artists and Youth program. We are not going to be on camera for this presentation, as we want to be sure that the ASL interpreter is highlighted and able to be seen prominently at all times. Because we are not visible, each presenter will do a brief visual description and identify themselves before speaking. Not in my case, because I have been speaking, but I am a middle-aged, light-skinned Black woman with microlocks and big colorful glasses. In my photo, they are gray at the time. To move on into what we will be talking about today, I'll let my colleagues describe themselves when their parts come up. To go over the agenda for today, we'll start with our program overview and key dates. We'll move into conversations on eligibility, which will be split into applicant eligibility and program eligibility. We will review the review process and the funding priorities. We'll review the review process and the funding priorities. And then we'll take some time to screen share and walk through the actual eligibility quiz and application. So that wraps up this first section. And so I will give an overview of the program before we move into eligibility. The Creative Experiences Program provides grants to organizations, including schools, to fund festivals, projects, residencies, and other cultural activities in the arts, humanities, and sciences. The program combines festivals and projects and creative projects for schools into a single program. It aims to support activities incorporating the arts, sciences, and humanities where people can engage with creativity, discover and express their voice, explore the natural world, and connect to their history and community. The Creative Experiences program is designed following evaluation of our funding across the sector and as a response to the agency's racial equity plan, and is strongly linked to the Mass Cultural Council's values expressed in our FY24 to 26 strategic plan. And you have information here about our mission and vision at Mass Cultural Council, and you can find a lot more of that information on our website. So to move back to creative experiences, we have two grant amounts for this program. It's either $2,500 or $5,000. And we will talk about how you qualify for those amounts in the next couple of slides. The deadline for submitting an application for this program is April 30th of 2026. It is at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You will find out about whether or not your application is successful in early September of this year, 2026. And eligible experiences take place between July 1st of 2026 and June 30th of 2027, which is the actual fiscal year 2027. The application has already opened and opened on March 3rd. Congratulations. We just went through the deadline. And to add to that timeline, the contracts and payment will be in winter of 2026. The contracting is a multi-step process with DocuSigns, and the payments are electronic transfers. And there is a final report that is due for grantees. It is simple. And it's just to describe the use of their grant funds, and that will be due in July of 2026. And we also have office hours throughout March and April, which are small group opportunities to connect with the team, Amy, Kaylin, and myself, to ask questions and really get an opportunity to talk about what you are seeing particularly. You'll see that they are at different times throughout the day. We hope that you are able to connect with us during one of these times, but we will also share our contact information at the end of the presentation as well. So we will move on to eligibility, and I'm going to hand it over to Kaylin.
Thank you, Cheyenne. I am Kaylin King. My pronouns are she, her. I am a program officer on the organizations team at the Mass Cultural Council, and I co-manage the Creative Experiences team along with Cheyenne and Amy. For a visual description, I am a 30-something white woman with shoulder-length blonde hair, wearing a black jacket and new black glasses. I am talking about eligibility today. So, who can apply for this program? First, it's a program for organizations and not for individuals. But for the type of eligible organization, it's intentionally broad. So you can be a nonprofit or a for-profit organization as defined by the state. Or you can apply if you run another type of creative business, including if you're organized as a single member LLC, as long as you apply with an eligible fiscal agent. You can apply as a town or municipal department, as a school, or even a community organization without a legal status, again, as long as you have an eligible fiscal agent. We'll get into more specifics on each of these different types of organizations and the things that we'll need from you. But first, a few things that apply across all of the categories. All organizations must be based in Massachusetts or recognized to do business in the Commonwealth with a Massachusetts address. If you're an unincorporated organization or another type of creative business that's not registered on the state level, we would consider based in Massachusetts to mean that the majority of your programming takes place in Massachusetts. All organizations must also be in good standing with their relevant oversight entity. So for most organizations applying, that's going to mean that you are up to date with your reporting to the Secretary of the Commonwealth, not dissolved or revoked. If you have tax exempt status with the IRS, making sure that that's active and that you're registered with the state's Attorney General's office. If you're an applicant using a fiscal agent, that relationship is going to need to be in place and attested to at the time of the application. And last, all organizations, regardless of their legal status, must be responsible for the production, presentation, or facilitation of the proposed experience. So that just means you're the one actually doing it. This program does not fund things that are solely sponsorship or fundraising or marketing efforts, for a coordinated wide thing. Last, a couple of things that do apply across the board for everyone else that I want to highlight. There's no minimum organization size to be eligible. There's no minimum, annual operating budget, and there's no minimum number of years that you have to have been in operation for in order to be eligible. Okay, to go into more detail, eligible nonprofits, they do not need to have a 501c3, which is a federal designation that some, but not all nonprofits apply for with the IRS. Being registered on the state level is just fine. That means, though, that we're going to need to be able to find you in one of two state databases. You'd need to either be in the Secretary of the Commonwealth's Business Entity Division database or in the Attorney General's nonprofit organizations / public charities database. My colleague is putting all of those links in the chat. They're also linked in our guidelines, so you can go there and just double check that you can find yourself before you go to complete the eligibility quiz and the application. If you can't find yourself in these databases, but you're like, I swear I'm a nonprofit, why can't I find myself? Reach out to our team at creativeexperiences@mass.gov and we will help you figure it out. There are some cases where that happens and it's still okay, so just contact us. The next type is for-profits. Certain types of for-profits are also eligible to apply directly for this program. They will also need to be registered and up to date with the Secretary of the Commonwealth. And it depends on your legal status and how you report your taxes, whether you are allowed to apply directly or if you would need to apply with a fiscal agent as a for-profit. The ones that do not need fiscal agents are profit corporations, multiple member limited liability companies, which include C Corps, S Corps, and partnership LLCs, limited partnerships or limited liability partnerships, and benefit corporations. The types that do need a fiscal agent are other types of for-profit businesses. So those are ones that might be organized as sole proprietorships or single member LLCs. They're eligible to apply, but they must have an eligible fiscal agent in place at the time of the application. So that would be an eligible organization who is willing to accept and administer the grant award on their behalf. We can't pay other types of creative businesses directly, so you would need a fiscal agent. Okay, The next two types are government entities and schools. Government entities and municipal departments are eligible to apply. So that could be a recreation department or a municipally run senior center, a public library, or a local cultural council that's doing its own programming itself. And schools are eligible to apply, whether they are themselves a government entity or they're a for-profit or a nonprofit. You could fall into a number of the categories we've just discussed as a school. But it must be recognized by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, with a current school year DESE ID. Okay, so the last category are unincorporated organizations. These are groups of people who have come together to pursue a common goal without forming a separate legal entity. Sometimes it's just a casual coalition of people. Sometimes you might be waiting for your legal status to get approved, things like that. But they are not part of another organization that has its own legal status. So, for example, if you are a club at a school, the school is going to need to apply. They would be the applicant themselves. But if you are a community group who just has a pre-existing identity, you are functioning as an organization and you just don't happen to have a legal status, you would be considered an unincorporated organization and you could apply for this program if you have an eligible fiscal agent at the time of the application. What is an eligible fiscal agent, you might be asking yourself about now? Well, for this program, an eligible fiscal agent is one of two things. It is either a tax-exempt organization with the IRS, who's also registered on the state level with the AGO or SOC, or a Massachusetts city or town. A town department is not going to be able to do that themselves. It'll need to be paid through the town in most cases. So it would be a relationship with the town um, manager or however it's organized there. The fiscal agent does not have to be located in Massachusetts. It could be a national nonprofit. And one organization can serve as a fiscal agent for multiple applicants. A fiscal agent can also apply for its own funding through the program as long as it's for a separate project that has nothing to do with what you're applying for. Okay, but what does it mean to apply with a fiscal agent? Organizations using a fiscal agent are ones that we can't pay directly through this program should they be awarded a grant. Instead, the fiscal agent completes the contract and receives the payment, and then they are the ones responsible for distributing those funds. So they act as the legal and contractual representative of the applicant organization. And they can provide a variety of services as part of that agreement. But the most important is that they maintain supervision over the funds and they make sure that they are used for the purpose of the agreement. As I mentioned, a fiscal agent is different from a parent organization. So a parent organization is a larger organization that supervises or controls things like policy, fundraising, or spending at an organization. So, like the club at the school I mentioned earlier, where fiscal agents agree to act as the legal and contractual representative for an organization, but they're really separate from you. Fiscal agents need to be in place at the time of the application. And if you need help finding a fiscal agent, one great resource is Creative Ground and its search function. Their website is creativeground.org. You can also contact our program staff at the council, and we can share with you some organizations that have done similar, have been fiscal agents for similar types of organizations or are in your area. Okay, last notes, I promise, on organization eligibility. Mass Cultural Council wants to fund as many organizations as possible. So there are limits on receiving multiple grants from our direct granting programs. We do not mean local cultural councils or cultural facilities funding. You can get grants through those programs and still get a creative experiences grant. We do mean FY26 operating grants for organizations, cultural investment portfolio, cultural district investment, and gaming mitigation fund grant recipients. They cannot apply for FY27 creative experiences. If you got a creative experiences grant in FY26, so our last round, which is currently running right now, um, you can apply again for funding in FY27, but you have to do your approved activity by June 30th of this year, which is the end of our fiscal year. And you have to complete the final report for that grant by the deadline, which is July 15th, 2016, in order to be eligible for FY27 funding through the program. Organizations can apply for both creative experiences and the Youth Reach program if they're eligible for it. Youth Reach is another grant program that we have open right now. The deadline to apply for that is April 2nd. Proposals for creative experiences and Youth Reach will be reviewed simultaneously, though separately. And if you're awarded a Youth Reach grant, you would not receive a creative experiences grant, though there's no guarantee of funding from either program. Okay, handing it back to Cheyenne. Thank you.
That was a lot, but now we get to talk about experiences, the fun stuff. All eligible experiences need to incorporate the arts, humanities, and sciences. For more information on how we've decided to find those words, please check our FAQ on our website. We have more information on there. But the only note I will say is that for sciences, we fund the interpretation of sciences, not the research sciences. But all programs must incorporate arts, humanities, or sciences. Um, they must be intended for or promoted to the general public or offered to a specific community. Mass Cultural Council is a public agency, so our grants are public investments. So we have prioritized and made it so that only experiences that will be benefiting the public or a portion of the public are eligible. We recognize that portions of the public, and we have more information on how we've defined that again in our FAQs and on our website. But say students would be a portion of the community, seniors, same thing. And we recognize that portions of the general public require specific accommodations to participate in creative experiences. For example, you wouldn't invite the whole town to an elementary school science fair. So we understand that especially K-12 specific experiences might not be open to the general public, as long as they're open to the community around the students. We know that certain cultural preservation events are not open to the general public, only the community members and those kinds of things, because they serve the wider community, they are still eligible. All activities must be accessible to persons with disabilities. You can find more information and connect with staff on that. It's more than just physical accessibility. There are other things that can make your experience accessible, so please check out those resources. Your experience must take place between July 1st, 2026 and June 30th, 2027. If your activity is a series of events and the last one or the first one is outside of that period, it's okay, but the majority of your activity must take place in that year of July 1st, 2026 and June 30th, 2027. To and it must take place in Massachusetts. If your event is virtual, the target audience for your event must be a Massachusetts-based art audience. To move to the next slide, um, this is where we get into the difference between the two grant amounts. So $2,500 is our base grant amount, and to apply for a $2,500 grant, your experience must incorporate arts, humanities, and sciences, as we said, and have a minimum project budget of at least $2,500. And we mean actual cash expenses, not in-kind support. To apply for a $5,000 grant, your experience must have the primary purpose of producing, presenting, or facilitating an experience in the arts, humanities, and sciences. So the difference here is that for $2,500, your larger event can have a smaller portion of it be featuring arts, humanities, and sciences. But for $5,000, arts, humanities, and science needs to be the primary purpose of the experience. And for $5,000, your project budget must at least have $5,000 in actual cash expenses. To keep going, eligible experiences. We just talked about eligible experiences. So to talk about ineligible experiences, they are experiences that are inherently religious, such as worship or proselytization, feature a political candidate, discriminate on the basis of race, gender, religious creed, color, national origin, disability, or sexual orientation. Ineligible experiences are for the express benefit of a specific person or closed or private group, defined by personal relationships, employment, or residence, rather than a shared community identity, which is how we were explaining a portion of the general public being a shared community identity. Ineligible experiences are to solely promote sponsorship, fundraising, or marketing efforts and individual sales, or solely aim to underwrite presenter tabling or vendor fees for participating in event. So in short, these funds are to go to the people who are creating experiences for the public. Thank you for your understanding there. For our program, it is very widely known that organizations partner and that a lot of organizations will be applying for funding for things that are happening at the same time and at the same place. So we're going to move on to multiple and overlap or applications. So this is where you really want to be communicative with your partners, because we're really saying that this program is one application per organization, per event, per audience. So if you are you can't apply from one school and say that this one's for the art teacher and this one's for the library and this one is for the community day, because we would consider that three applicants from one organization. You can't say that we have three partners on a festival and all three of us are gonna apply and see who is successful. You have to choose a partner to be the applicant, and the other partners will be named. You'll see in the application a place where you can put down the other partners that you're working with, but we are trying to have one application per organization or per event, or per audience, if that's how it is set up in your situation. Maybe your audience is the Boston Women's Shelter. So, it wouldn't be by, um, organization, it might be audience at the shelter. If we do get multiple or overlap applications, the application from the primary producer of the experience or the higher scoring application will be kept. But we do get thousands of applications, almost 2,000 applications. And so we're trying to cut down on the amount of applications we have to figure out are for the same experience. Yes. To give you examples, we have for organization overlap, the local orchestra submits two different applications for two different performances. That's one organization submitting two applications. We are asking for people to cut down on those, especially if it's a small application. If it's a small event for $2,500, you should definitely combine those into one application for $5,000 and cut down on the overlap. For an example of an event with overlapping applications, we have a dance company and a band both submit applications for their co-produced music festival. In that case, we are advising that you communicate and plan for who's going to apply and put your best foot forward instead of trying both. And for an example of an audience overlap, we have a school and its PTO both submit applications for activities for the students. So we talked about one example for a school with the different departments applying for their own activities. And another very, very popular example of overlap is PTOs and schools both applying to benefit the same group of children. So that's something to think and plan around in your meetings. Please have conversations with school administrators about what is going to be applied for and try to act strategically. Thank you. You've gotten through eligibility. So if you're an eligible type of organization, you have an eligible project. Let's go into what we would do if you'd submitted an application. What happens next? The applications are reviewed by staff, but I'm going to pass it to Amy so she can give us the details.
Hi everyone. I'm Amy. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm on the artist and youth team. I'm an Asian American woman in her 20s, and today I'm wearing a black shirt with a floral pattern on it. Um, okay, so now we'll just be talking about our review process, and then also our funding priorities, which is how we make our funding decisions. Okay, so this year we will make funding decisions using geographic distribution and our funding priorities. So to ensure geographic diversity, grants will be awarded by county in proportion to the county's application demand. So for example, if applications from Essex County make up 7% of the total applications received, Essex County will be allocated approximately 7% of the grants made. And then as for funding priorities, those were also used last year, so they will be familiar, but I will go into them with more detail in the next few slides. Before I talk about them one by one, I do want to note that funding priorities are different from eligibility. So we just went through the criteria that determines if you are eligible for application or for funding. But even if you don't meet any of these funding priorities that I will discuss in the next few slides, but you do meet all the eligibility guidelines, you are still very welcome to apply. We basically just use the funding priorities to create a list of applications based on their score, and then we fund down this list until we run out of funding. All right, so The first funding priority that I will talk about, the first two have to do with supporting the cultural sector. So these two priorities are in line with our commitment to the cultural sector of Massachusetts. So the first is experiences where the primary purpose is creating, presenting, or providing services in the arts, humanities, or sciences. So applicants that meet this priority point can apply for the $5,000, as Cheyenne said earlier. Um, but again, this is different from the eligibility where you only need to incorporate. This is if your experience has the primary purpose in the arts, humanities, and science. The second priority point is experiences that hire and compensate Massachusetts artists, humanists, and or scientists. Um, and so one little tip from schools, just check what your school or district's policies are for compensating artists or contract workers. And this can go for other organizations too, but just checking um, what the policies are so that you can avoid confusion later on can be helpful. If you are looking to work with an artist or an organization, Creative Ground is an awesome resource that you can filter by the type of discipline or service. Maybe you want to find an artist who runs workshops or an artist who does teaching residencies. This is a really, really good resource for finding an artist based in Massachusetts. All right, so our next funding priority has to do with funding history. Um, so there are 2 points that have to do with the funding history. The first is applicants that have not received funding from Mass Cultural Council in the last 3 fiscal years, um, or applicants that are applying for the very first time. Um, and then the second point is applicants that have only received a total of $5,000 in the last 3 fiscal years. So this might be equivalent to getting the grant one time last year. And both of these would receive priority points for fitting that criteria. And this is just part of our commitment to funding more people and experiences, including those that are new to our grant programs. Okay, so the next funding priority has to do with access for low-income individuals and families. So this point is applicants participating in the agency's Card to Culture program or experiences that are free to the public. So I'll go into more of like what is considered free or not when we do the application walkthrough, since I know some events will use sliding scales or pay what you can. So just hang tight for that. And please note that you only get the priority point for one of these. So if your organization participates in Card to Culture and the event is free, this will only count for one priority factor. All right, so this priority point is meant to align with our agency's racial equity plan, and it concerns BIPOC-centered organizations or BIPOC majority schools. So organizations that self-identify as led by and serving Black, Indigenous, people of color will receive this priority point. If you think your organization is BIPOC-centered according to our definition, then you can register in the grants portal. If you've already filled out this form in the past, you're good for all foreseeable grant programs that use this. There's no need to fill it out again for now. Schools are a little different. We use a different metric for this. So public and charter schools will not need to fill out this form to self-identify. Instead, we will just use demographic data from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. However, I do want to note that private schools do not report data to DESE, so we don't have this information to go off of. So even if your private school has a BIPOC majority student body, we wouldn't have this in our system. So therefore, if you are a private school that considers itself BIPOC centered according to our definition, then you are totally welcome to fill out this form to meet that priority point. So I just want to note again that the definitions of BIPOC centered is different than having BIPOC majority student demographics for a public or charter school. Um, so yeah, I'll go more into that later when we look at the application. Yeah, so you can find the form to register for Card to Culture and for the BIPOC centered self-identification under the current opportunities um, in the slide. Um, and then, oh, and if you're a private school, send us an email at creativeexperiences@mass.gov because organizations that are registered as schools will not be able to see the form. So we'll just make sure that it pops up for you. And the forms are pretty sweet and simple. You'll just have to answer a couple of open-ended questions. Okay, finally, there is a list of priority communities that we will look at for our priority factors. And these will include experiences in cities and towns that are below the state's median household income and below statewide educational attainment. This includes, but is not limited to, places designated as gateway cities. And there will be a full list of these cities in the chat. Okay, so I know that I just went through a bunch of funding priority points, but here they are, all 6 or 7 of them together, but I will be discussing them more and how they show up in the application when I do the walkthrough, which is now. So just giving you a brief overview before I click through it. First, you'll see the login page. And then you'll find the application under current opportunities on your homepage. And then we'll walk through the eligibility quiz, which is basically just how we look at if your experience is eligible, if your organization is eligible, and then we'll go through the application and it's like open-ended questions together. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. Okay, so hopefully people can see that. This is what it should look like when you log into your Smart Simple account. There are instructions for registering on our website. And if you have issues with registering, feel free to reach out to us, but I'm going to skip that part for now so we can get to the application. So the grant will be found under current opportunities. Give it 1 second to load. Okay. It will be near the bottom and you can see creative experiences and you'll click apply now. So this is the eligibility quiz. I am going to click through a few options just so you guys can see it, but ultimately I'm going to apply as a nonprofit. But you can see that you will need to select your legal status. If you're not sure which legal status you are, you might want to read this helpful information up top or review our frequently asked questions, or feel free to contact us. But I will just click through just so that you can see it. So remember, if you are unincorporated or one of the creative businesses that we cannot pay directly, you will need to click applicant using a fiscal agent. And then you'll answer these questions. And you'll just keep going, and there will be like a fiscal agent section under the contracting for your application. I'm also going to click through the for-profit organization. Um, so this will be similar to the nonprofit as well, but um, you should be able to find your organization in the SOC website or in the AGO website. So I will just show you what those look like. So this is the SOC website. The link is in the application, and you would just search your organization um, and find the profile and copy the exact link if it's not showing up for you. And then same with the AGO, you'll need to search the name, or you can use the EIN or the AGO number. So yeah, so if I was able to find it, I can click yes. And then for profits, we'll need to select these distinctions between different tax classifications. And then these questions, who is this experience intended for, et cetera, these are just, they have to do with eligibility for your project. So I'm going to go through as a nonprofit organization now. Oh my gosh, actually, schools, don't worry, I did not forget about you. This is also slightly different. It'll pop up later with your DESI ID, and you'll have to either know that or it should pre-populate with it. So yeah, okay. So nonprofits. So I can attest that I was able to find it on the SOC website. This experience is intended for the general public or a specific community. It will take place in or mostly in the fiscal year. And then, of course, it will take place in Massachusetts. So after you've answered all of those, you can click Save Draft. And okay, so it should look like a longer link, but I'm going to say that it looks correct. And if it doesn't look correct, you'll be able to fill it in there. And then you'll need to go back down and check eligibility. And this basically runs your answers through the quiz. And then I'm going to hit proceed. So I'm going to go through it a bit quickly so we have time for questions at the end. But this is the eligibility quiz, but now you see that you can click through other tabs. All these checkboxes are basically to say that, yes, the information looks correct. And if it doesn't, you're checking yes to say that I have contacted staff about making changes if it's not correct. And you can use the notes function to do that, or you can email us at our email. Okay, so for the contract information, if you're using a fiscal agent, you'll put in your fiscal agent's contract information. But if you are your own organization managing your own contracts, you'll put the contract signatory, which is the person who signs the contract. And then you'll put the contract authorized officer, which is the person who has the authority to attest that the above person can sign contracts. So that's why these have to be two different people. So make sure that you are putting in two different names for this information. If you're not sure who this is, we usually can't advise because it is different for every organization. So I would recommend that you talk to your organization's fiscal department or someone should know this information, if not you, the person filling it out. Yep. Okay, so this is the sort of the meat of the application where you tell us what it is and what it's about. You'll put the name of the experience, so nothing crazy, no like all caps or no emojis because this is what will be going on the contract. So you want to put something official there. The discipline, which we just like to know so that for reporting purposes, but the discipline does not affect your funding consideration. And then your role in the experience. So you might want to describe exactly what it says, your organization's role in producing, presenting, or facilitating. And then you'll also want to describe any partners that you have and what they're doing. Um, and then we want to know when the experience is taking place. And if you don't know exactly, you can give us just your best estimate. Don't stress about it too much, but we just want to check that it's in the eligible time period. You can explain what you're doing on these different dates here, but that is optional. Um, Here's the arts, humanities, and sciences question. So this is important because we use it to review for your eligibility. We check that your experience incorporates the arts, humanities, and sciences. But if it does more than that, if the primary purpose is in the arts, humanities, and sciences, then you can select primary purpose. And this is also confirming that that you can apply for the $5,000. So we will be looking at that. Um, and so you will talk more about this question as well as just telling us what your experience is in the detailed description. Um, I would suggest not overthinking this too hard. We don't look at grant writing. We don't look for beautiful prose or poetry when reviewing your application. We just want to know, like, we want to get a better idea of what your experience is. And we will be looking at how it incorporates or um, primarily uh, is the purpose in arts, humanities, and science here as well. Um, but again, I think just being honest and describing the experience to the best of your ability is totally fine. Um, all right, so then we will ask the steps that you take to ensure that the experience is accessible to people who are deaf or have a disability. Um, there's more information in our FAQ, just some quick suggestions on things that all organizations of all sizes can do to make their experience more accessible. Like you'd be surprised, like it can be as easy as printing out large print or creating a know before you go. And those go a long way. Um, and then experience type, this is again just for us to know, but it will not factor into your funding decision. And then we'll ask who the audience is. So here we want to know, like, who is this intended for? Like, who are you trying to reach with this experience? And then how are you intending to reach that audience? So how will you promote this experience to them? Um, or yeah, how will you let them know about it or, invite them to join? Um, so that's why we also ask for additional links. So if you have like an Instagram or a website or a Facebook page, feel free to put that here. It can give us a clear idea of how you promote the experience. So it is often helpful to look at, but you'll notice that it is optional, but we do suggest it if you have it. Um, Uploads, we totally understand. Maybe you're just posting up flyers, you're printing out uh, pages for people, posters. You can put JPEGs and documents and PDFs here in the uploads. So again, this gives us a better idea of who your audience is and how you're promoting it to your audience. Okay, so this is the grant amount slash budget section. I will go for 5,000 because I said that my primary purpose is arts, humanities, science. For the project budget, you'll get the opportunity to put in different lines of types of expenses. And we highly recommend that you put in more than one line. Last year, we saw people just wrap it all into one budget line. Even if you are paying an artist or an organization to kind of they're kind of running the program for you. So it's kind of like a package payment. We still want to see how they broke down the budget so we can understand where, the money, like how it's being used. So you can put in the amount here. put in a brief description here. And if you are hiring a Massachusetts artist, you can put that more of that into there. Okay. And then finally, the prioritization factors. If you're hiring or compensating any Massachusetts artists, in addition to the budget where you put some details, we want to know here, like, who are you hiring? If you don't know exactly who, you can say like, oh, we're looking for a guitarist in the area. But just give us a better idea of who you're looking for, what activities or services they're being hired for. So this, you can include planning time or teaching or facilitation, etc. I do want to note that arts admin don't necessarily count for this. We are looking for people who are facilitating um, the arts experience. Um, all right, and then we will be asking about city or town because we look at that in the funding priorities. If you're a school, just put the town that your school is located in, even if your school is doing a field trip or something. But for all others, just put the city or town that your experience takes place in. And then the funding history, the BIPOC centered org, the card to culture are all pre-filled in, so you don't need to do that. However, if you're trying to get the free priority point, you will need to say yes or no, and then describe your pricing structure. And we tell you what we mean by free or what doesn't necessarily count as free. And then finally, you want to click I agree to the attestation. And this will just say that all the information is correct according to your knowledge. And yeah, all of this small print here. So I'm sorry if I sped through that, but I think we have a little bit of time for questions, though I know the Q&A has been really busy. But I think Cheyenne was going to point out a few questions that might be coming up more
Yes.
than others.
Thank you, Amy. I actually wanted to start, there were some questions about what you mean by arts admin versus facilitating the experience.
Yeah. So we are looking for artists, humanists, scientists that are offering services that are related to their like creative practice, I guess, versus, arts admin, sorry, like I guess administrators are doing more of like uh yeah, they might be like writing this grant. And that alone is not necessarily like what we're looking for when we're talking about that priority point. And I'm an arts admin, so I just want to say it's not because we don't care and love them, but care for and love them, but um, we do want to like prioritize experiences that are, you know, engaging in these experiences for the audience. So hopefully that clarifies it. But there is more information in the FAQ as well.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Yep.
I think for the to go back to some of the things I was seeing in the Q&A, I will just talk through the points that I was seeing and clarify. We are saying arts, humanities, or sciences. Your events do not have to incorporate all three. Arts, humanities, and sciences must be incorporated into your project. It does not have to do with what your organization does fundamentally. It is about the project that you're doing. In terms of overlap, your fiscal agent is not the applicant. So we have many fiscal agents that are fiscal agent to many organizations. That does not disqualify you from getting a grant, nor does getting LCC funding. LCCs are their own entities, so they're not considered direct grants for Mass Cultural Council. But you also don't have to worry about the funding history points that is calculated on the back end and in the application. You just confirm, um, uh, we just confirm for you what we have. Um, and anything else? Oh, and dates. Um, if it is, you are still eligible if some of your event is outside of the dates, but the majority of your event must take place within the fiscal year dates, June 30th, 2026 to July 1st, 2027. And so that is still eligible. And I think that is it for what I was seeing a lot of in the Q&A. Does anybody else have anything from the Q&A that they were seeing from our team that they want to add?
Hi, this is Kaylin King speaking. I want to reiterate that grants from local cultural councils are not considered as a grant directly from the Mass Cultural Council, which is what we are looking at when we are considering funding history in the prioritization factors.
Great. There is a question about priority community. That is a list that was put together based on metrics about the different municipalities in the state. It's about educational attainment and household income. So there's a link to the list on our website. If you go through and look all the way through the guidelines page in that section, there'll be a link to the lists of cities and towns. I believe it's also gateway cities in addition to educational attainment and household income. But that is most of the priority points are going to be based on factual things like where your project is taking place, and we'll show you the list and tell you what those metrics are. Or they're based on things that you don't have to enter at all because we already have the information.
I'll answer the question, can you receive donations or registration fees from other sources for your event? Yeah, you're totally free to find other funding for your event, but we do check that you are asking for the minimum grant. We do ask that you're looking for from us the minimum amount that you need. So if you're asking for $5,000 from us, we want to check that you have at least $5,000 in expenses that wouldn't be covered by other things. Because once it's covered by another donation or another grant, it you would no longer need $5,000 from us, if that makes sense. But yes, you are welcome to look for other funding from other places too.
And I would also like to clarify that eligibility are the things that make it so that you can or cannot receive funding or can or cannot apply. So that's your legal status and the different elements of your experience. Funding priorities are just how you get points to get higher up in the proposed funding list. So you will not be ineligible based on your funding history. You will not be ineligible based on not being in a priority community. But those are things that get you points and more likely to be funded because this is a competitive program. And part of our evolution of this program is refining these priority points to make sure that we're concentrating the funding to the projects that are most aligned with the values of the agency.
Okay, I see another question about can the grant cover the expenses of creating a sculptural installation in a nature play area where creative experiences would be facilitated to teach kids about nature? Um, so any expense related to the creative experience is eligible for this grant. So if the experience does require creating something like a sculpture or a mural is also a common one, or some sort of public art, um, if that is necessary for the experience that you will have, then yes, that is fine. Okay, so the response stating that this is not subjective review, funding is determined by priority factors. Does this mean our narrative responses don't matter? We do look at your narrative responses for just more information to kind of fill in for the priority points. Like I said, with the arts, humanities, or sciences priority point, like we do take a look at your application to give us more information about that. So I would say don't worry about your narrative responses being beautiful or well written, like in terms of grant writing. This is not what that's about, but it is about giving us information and telling us what your experience is so that we can properly review it. Um, and then I
We
think we'll
have
do
a
2 more
question.
minutes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this can be our last question. Is a medical provider instructing the program and also our faculty in higher ed considered a scientist? Also, is a medical provider who's also an artist using artwork considered an artist? I think that these definitions are intentionally broad. We would like you to explain your experience within these terms in whatever makes sense. A medical provider is definitely a scientist, um, someone who is creating art and facilitating experiences with the art that they created is definitely considered an artist. So I think that we're not grading you or reviewing how your budget is labeled. These are just really categories to be able to explain the nuances of your projects to us. So I think all of those things are yeses to that question and specifically.
All right. So, yeah, and that also I just want to note that we can't answer like, is something eligible? Like, is this okay? Outside of our application review, because that we can't do that for everyone. So we just want to be fair and also really rely on the eligibility quiz to help you answer these questions or explain, like make your case in your application for us. So if you think that your um, that higher ed professor qualifies as a scientist, like make the case for that in the application for us. And then, yeah, so we are, if we did not get to your question, we are on email constantly. So we are happy to answer. And we have those weekly virtual office hours as well. And we will be sharing out these resources, including all the chat links and the FAQ information. So don't worry, we'll send it all out to people who are registered for this event. Um, and everything is recorded and available elsewhere. So thanks for staying on a little bit longer. And yeah, we hope to see some of you guys in the office hours or on email and especially in our applications. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.